The open question right now is, if you're out there in a company and you're generating these products or these processes, are you violating copyrights? Are you violating patents? Are you violating trademarks? And how do you know if that's what it's doing?
Good morning, HR. I'm Mike Coffey, president of Imperative, bulletproof background checks with fast and friendly service. And this is the podcast where I talk to business leaders about bringing people together to create value for shareholders, customers, and the community. Please follow, rate, and review Good Morning HR wherever you get your podcast. You can also find us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, or at goodmorninghr.com. I'll just explain up front that I'm not in my normal environment. Scheduling issues, also known as my poor planning, required that we record today's episode while I'm on the road, so I'm coming to you from the Sofitel in Beverly Hills today. A couple weeks ago, I was joined by Michael Sherrod, entrepreneur in residence at Texas Christian University's Neely School of Business, to discuss the impact of artificial intelligence on business strategy. Today, we explore the legal issues surrounding the use of AI in the business setting. And I can think of no one better to consider those issues than my friend Jim Zadeh. Jim is an attorney and the founder and principal of the eponymous Zadeh firm, a Fort Worth, Texas-based law firm. Jim is also an adjunct professor at the Texas A&M School of Law, as well as at the TCU Neely School of Business. And fun side note, Jim and I both teach at the Core Power Yoga in Fort Worth. And he was my first guest on Good Morning HR. Welcome back, Jim.
Hi, Mike. Am I supposed to say something else, Mike, or do we just talk?
No, this is good.
I know.
We go way back, Jim. You don't have to
I know. We know way
about
back.
me.
We talk all the time during breakfast, and we have these conversations during breakfast. So now a bunch of people get to hear our breakfast conversations. That's going to be amazing. We just have to be careful about what we say.
If we do that, we'll both be canceled before the end of the episode. So let's just talk about AI and HR, okay? Or an AI in business. So,
all right.
But anyway, you're presenting about the legal issues surrounding the use of AI at the Fort Worth HR Employment Law Update on April 4th. And in anticipation of that, I just wanted to get you on the podcast to give a bit of a preview and kind of talk about some of the things you and I have kicked around as we've talked over breakfast and coffee and things like that. So we've talked a lot about the issues around AI in the human resources area. I direct our listeners to the Kate Bischoff interview I did last summer around mitigating bias. But the legal issues companies face go beyond the very real concerns about bias and employee selection. What do you think the biggest legal issue on the macro level of the business that companies face when they're looking at using AI?
I think it's privacy and confidentiality. Right now, what I'm seeing, for example, just this morning, it came out from a report that this weekend that they have developed a worm that can now get into artificial intelligence. And similar to viruses that get into your email or get into everything else, they can get this worm into AI. Unfortunately, it was white hat people that were hackers that were doing it. But they were able to get into it, and they were able to get personal data out of the artificial intelligence. They were able to control some of the devices that artificial intelligence was using. So, for example, if you have a car that had artificial intelligence, this worm could have got in there and manipulated it. And then once it gets in, it can also get all the personal data. And so the more you give to artificial intelligence from your company, and you're going to be tempted to give everything you have, even your own personal chat GPT, you run the risk right now of confidentiality, you run the risk of privacy, and we all know how those lawsuits go. There's lawsuits all over the country for data breaches right now, and companies are really worried about that on the internet level, but they haven't really thought it through on the AI level.
Yeah, I've heard stories, and I know you have too, about law firms where the principals realize, all of a sudden that they've got some associates someplace feeding all the case details into ChatGPT or something to help write a brief, and they're concerned about that. And certainly we've warned here, people, and in my presentations on AI at HR conferences, anonymize anything you're pouring into the large language models. They say they're going to keep it private, and they're not going to train their data on your information, but do we really trust them to do that? But now you're saying I hadn't heard that. It was a matter of time before somebody figured out how to hack into a large language model like that. And it's not just large language models. I mean, that's what ChatGPT and those things are. But AI is getting, like you said, in Teslas and in motor vehicles, and so if some of the big areas where they talk about AI being really useful is like healthcare. And so if you don't have that locked down, you've got all this patient data, and suddenly you've got HIPAA violations and everything else if you don't control that. So what would you tell a client then that says, hey, we really want to incorporate these AI tools, but necessarily we've got to give personal information, some level of personal information into this system in order to get accurate results back?
Well, I mean, it's similar to when you use the cloud, right? And you go out into the cloud, and then somehow they get into the cloud and they get all your data. Well, you have to do research on your vendors. You have to do due diligence on your vendors to make sure that they are good vendors and that they're doing what they do. I think we're going to go that same route with AI vendors. The problem with AI, or the issue with AI, is this whole black box concept, right? Where the AI people, the Microsofts of the world, OpenAI, Claude AI, and Gemini with Google, they say, hey, we've got a black box here and we don't know how it works. Well, if you invented it and you don't know how it works, how can you do due diligence on a vendor when the vendor doesn't even know how their product works? And fortunately, the guys that hacked in were white hat, and they came in and they published all their data to everybody, made it open source so that everybody can plug those holes. But if they were black hat, then and bad people, bad hackers, and they got into your data and they started sharing your HIPAA data out to everybody. Did you do due diligence on ChatGPT? I mean, what is it? Did you look through the terms and conditions? All of that stuff. So, if a companies just got to be really careful when they go out and use it, and they should resist the temptation to go and dump all their data into it right away. They should just nibble around the edges and try it. It's growing exponentially. It'll be here tomorrow. Just nibble around the edges and try it. I don't think you should just jump, both feet in with every piece of data you have.
And I think that's going to be, as we get more organization specific, personal GPTs or specific instances of just AI that are built into our ERP system or whatever, our accounting systems and everything else. The temptation is going to be, well, I can pay this vendor a lot and get all their certifications, or we could just develop it in-house at maybe a third of the cost and just use these freeware tools and see what happens. And and that may be fine if you're just drafting memos, but as soon as you start putting things that are really proprietary and stuff, you've got it's like you said, whether it's how you use do you email data, unsecured data. And I can tell you, as much as attorneys are concerned about protecting client confidentiality, on our litigation support side, I get unencrypted emails with all kinds of client information from attorneys all the time, and it makes me crazy. And then I get complaints when I reply back to them with information that they asked for, and it's encrypted, and they have to log into a website to collect them, to access the information. But they're the biggest ones. Certainly those dirty plaintiffs lawyers like you will be the first to run to the courthouse and defend or represent a plaintiff on something like that.
Absolutely. But the cobbler's son has no shoes, right? We as lawyers just do as we say, not as we do. The other thing that companies need to worry about is following the laws. Man, the laws are just changing so quickly. The EU has their laws, and are you sharing data that's going to the EU in some way? Is somehow your ChatGPT being involved in Europe? If it is, well, then you got to comply with their rules and regulations. And what are those rules and regulations? Well, they're being drafted now as we speak. There's a lot of drafts out
Right.
there. There's a lot of thoughts going on. And then in the U.S., you've got the executive order that Biden put out, making sure that all the agencies go ahead and do AI. And so all these individual agencies are coming up with different products and different policies and procedures, and then trying to promote things into law. And then you got, our wonderful 80-year-old senators who don't know AI from a hole in the ground, and they end up asking these questions of all these these leaders of AI, clearly not having any clue as to what's going on. And so we've got a Congress that is trying to act on something they don't understand. So an employer has really got to make sure they know the laws and understand the laws, and make sure, especially if they're international, that they're complying with all the rules that are out there, which is a lot. There's a lot out there.
Yeah, and the real issues, it's a lot. Just dealing with the laws that were already on the books before AI was even on our radar. It's when we're talking in the HR world, a lot of the stuff about bias in AI, it's already covered by Title VII. You already, you can't have systems that create a disparate impact. But like Europe has got, the EU's got GDPR, which, we deal with regularly when we're doing research for clients on individuals who have been or are currently in Europe, and, the how you do data transfers across nations, and those rules apply whether it's AI or not. And those are going to be the first ones that they get you in trouble with. There was a story a couple of weeks ago that we covered on Sarah Glasser's episode on HR News, where Amazon got nailed. I think it was $136 million by the French data privacy company regulator, because of how they were using employee productivity information, and basically, I'm sure Amazon never dreamed that data privacy would, be applied to how they use their own information, their own records about what employees do. But, it's not every place is as open and business friendly as the U.S. And so dealing with those issues, plus in the U.S., we've got the disadvantage that every little city or big city like New York City can create their own ordinances. And we've seen that certainly on the, New York City loves to make rules about HR-related issues, employment-related issues, and you have to, under current ordinances that they've already come up with in New York City, you have to test any AI you use related to making an employment decision has to be tested for bias, and you have to be able to defend that your system's not biased, and you have to be transparent about how you use AI in employee selection. So are you hearing much about transparency on the legal side outside of the HR area?
So it's, recently we have a consultant that helps me with a lot of the actual applications that we use here. And they went to a seminar, a convention, and they went to all the vendors, and every single vendor talked about AI in their product. Every one of the vendors talked about AI. And then when he tried to drill down what they meant, they didn't know what they meant. And it's because what they're doing is just taking a simple part of their product and just creating a prompt on AI that they're boiling into their product. And then they're saying, yeah, we have AI, just because they want to say it. Like in 1994, when the FDA had us put labels on food, all of a sudden everything became organic and natural. And that's similar to what's going on with products now, is everything is AI enhanced. But really, 90% of these companies just add one little AI component so they can give their marketing team something to do. I'm interested, though, in what you said about applying existing laws to what's going on with artificial intelligence. We've been running into this. So, I do personal injury and we do car wreck cases. And when you have a car that doesn't have a driver, you don't have a negligent driver. And so we just have a straight negligence. You have a duty to act as a reasonably prudent driver. You breach that duty by being on your phone, and you hit somebody and you cause the damages, and we got a case and the insurance pays. What do you do when you got a vehicle? And that turns a standard negligence case into a product liability case. Now you've got a product. And now under product liability, do you say it's a manufacturing defect, a design defect, a marketing defect? What does that fall under? And if the software that's put into that car gets a worm in it, well, then I guess I guess it would be either a manufacturing defect or a design defect, because somehow you let that worm get in there and corrupt that car and let it run into somebody. Or if you market that this is a vehicle that can never, be hacked, well, then you've got a marketing defect. And so we use, under the standard product liability laws, any company that's out there that's manufacturing a product that has artificial intelligence in it, they run straight into the product liability laws, and the EU is making sure that those product liability laws apply to artificial intelligence. And so it is giving us plaintiffs' lawyers a tool to go after companies who don't do their due diligence on using AI in their product, if that makes sense.
Oh, yeah. And when you think about the way most companies are accessing AI for their own purposes, if it's not, it's through some vendor. So you're either hiring a contractor who's putting a system together for you, or you're cobbling together open source tools, or you're, using GPT to do data analysis for you, all those kinds of things. And so you may have multiple people, right? I've got a developer who maybe they're on the hook. ChatGPT, I promise you that someplace in the 800 pages of your agreement, when you just clicked yes and didn't read it, even though the last thing you saw was I read all of the above and I agree and you can have my first child. They've waived any liability for that. We'll see how that plays out. But and then you've got hosting providers, who's hosting this, and are you building your own system, or are you putting it out there on, you're using Microsoft's Copilot and on Microsoft's cloud, and where's that data? So there's going to be, figuring out who's ultimately liable. But the person or the organization that really loses, regardless of who's ultimately liable, is that business, because nobody's going to remember that it was this developer's fault or this platform's fault or whatever. They're going to remember that this company had a data breach, or this company vehicle ran somebody over, or whatever or this company was found, that they were discriminating against people in a certain class, or some other kind of decision they're making that's unfair because they overly relied on AI. That they're going to remember. It's going to be the business's reputation that gets tarnished on that.
And as a personal injury attorney, but an attorney who sues on these types of things, I sue everybody. And so if you're the employer who or the company that manufactured this, I don't care what terms and conditions or what indemnification agreements you have, I'm suing. And I'm coming after you, coming after your insurance, coming after your company.
Yeah, because that's between you and your insurance company at that point, right?
That's right. And like you said, when the company gets tarnished, Air Canada with their chatbot, I don't know if you saw that story, but there was a small case in which there's a small case in which their chatbot, there was a airline ticket that got rescheduled, and the chatbot said, "Oh, when you reschedule, it'll be free." And they went ahead and rescheduled it, and Air Canada said, "Oh, you owe us $650." And the guy said, "Well, wait a minute, your chatbot said it was free," and he sued him for it. And he did it to make a point. And the Air Canada's defense was that chatbot is not part of our company. It's not an agent of our company. And that's a terrible defense. And they
it's
lost.
On their website, right?
Right. It's on their website, and it's their person talking to them. That AI chatbot is impersonating a agent. It isn't actually an agent of the company. And so Air Canada got really bad publicity because of that. It wasn't, it was a $650 case, but now they look incompetent. And you're going to see more and more of those stories come up. The poor lawyer in New York, we've all heard the story, who, he went ahead and did fake citations. And then when the court told him, hey, go ahead and tell us where you got that from, he went back to ChatGPT and it gave it more fake information. And he presented that to the court. And then the court said, come here and tell us why you did that. And he said when at the hearing, he goes, I'm going to say this 100 times. I did not understand artificial intelligence. I did not understand what I was doing. He got a $5,000 sanction, but he was the first one that was sanctioned because of using AI improperly on his briefs. He's not the last one. We're seeing almost every week that lawyers are presenting briefs that have citations that are not real, and they're saying statements of law that are not real. There was a appeals court brief. 22 of the 24 citations were wrong. There was another brief where an attorney was referred to the grievance committee and could get suspended or lose his license because he did not pay attention to what was in his brief. There's a judge here in the Northern District of Texas that is now requiring us in the federal court to put a statement on file in every single case that our documents were not used or were not generated by artificial intelligence, or if they were, human eyes have looked at them. And that way that they can know that. The other issue we're running into the law, there's a couple more issues, and I'm kind of getting off track here, but the other issue we're running into the law is artificial intelligence is making things so efficient that it is contrary to the inefficient billable hour system. And so if something is supposed to take you 4 hours, but it only takes you 10 minutes, because of AI, do you bill 4 hours or do you bill 10 minutes? And I think employers have got to look at their bills very carefully.
Yeah. Right. Because that's not just law firms, right? I mean, there are plenty of, consulting businesses and other businesses that pay, deliver their charge by the hour for whatever their services are, or you put together estimates and you've got maybe existing contracts that say we'll do this, with an estimated, 20 hours for this project, and now you can implement an AI. If I'm the customer and I find out you've implemented AI and it's only taking you 2 hours, am I paying for your expertise for that other 18 hours, or am I just getting ripped off? But I saw a survey that 9% of employer companies who hire big law firms are concerned that they're being overbilled, so they don't care. They're not concerned that they're being overbilled. Only 9% are looking at that. And so big law is going to take advantage of that. I always say never underestimate the greed of the American executive and never underestimate the greed of the partner in the American big law firms. They will take advantage of this for as long as they can, but eventually it's going to butt heads with the billable hour. And I think, ironically, what's going to turn the tide is artificial intelligence will be able to look at the bills and look at the work product and be able to tell whether or not it was done and how quickly it could have and should have been done. And let's take a quick break. Good Morning HR is brought to you by Imperative, bulletproof background checks with fast and friendly service. If you're an HRCI or SHRM certified professional, this episode of Good Morning HR has been pre-approved for 1/2 hour of recertification credit. To obtain the recertification information, visit goodmorninghr.com and click on Research Credits. Then select episode 138 and enter the keyword AI Legal. That's AILEGAL, all one word. And if you're looking for even more recertification credit, check out the webinars page at imperativeinfo.com. And now back to my conversation with Jim Zadeh. We talked, you mentioned about the AI just, making stuff up from whole, out of, whole cloth and citations and law, and we've seen it in everything. It's, you can still trick ChatGPT and ask it if a certain number is a prime number, and it'll get it wrong a great percentage of the time. So it's just, you have to, I always tell people when they're using, especially the generative AI stuff, use it as a first draft or maybe a third draft. I mean, it's a good third or fourth draft of your document, but every assertion that's in there, you need to go back and double check and make sure that it's right. And with, now with, if you're using GPT-4 or you're using, Microsoft's tool, you can ask for citations, actual links to websites, and it'll, often feed those back to you, and you can go look at the source yourself and see if it really says what they claim. But it's at this point, especially on the generative side, you've got to look at it as it's a great third draft, but it still needs somebody with some expertise to really go through it. But all those third drafts that we're talking about, those are being generated from other people's content, other stuff that was, someplace on the internet or in some data library that has been licensed by OpenAI or Anthropic or Microsoft or whoever, and the New York Times right now is suing Anthropic, or not Anthropic, but OpenAI for, claiming that, a lot of the information that they're, providing about history of things and things that have happened in the past and news items is just, a straight ripoff of the New York Times information. So, what about those kinds of issues about sourcing your information? Who owns the underlying information? How relevant is that if it's on the internet? And is it, is everything on the internet considered open source now? Or, what does a business need to worry about if they're going to use something in their business that may have been generated based on something on the internet they don't even know what the source of is?
So you touched on so many things to unpack there. The New York Times case,
okay.
And the New York Times
let's start
case,
there.
Yeah, we'll start in the New York Times case where OpenAI just filed a motion to dismiss that. And they did not file a motion to dismiss on trademark dilution, copyright infringement, or other types of copyright infringement. But they did file it on some other things. And what they argued was New York Times presented this Exhibit J is now becoming famous. But in Exhibit J of their petition, they showed that ChatGPT could go ahead and get past the paywall and get the New York Times. And so you can go ahead and get the New York Times if you can go ahead and say the right prompts. Well, OpenAI said, well, that's a hack. You hacked it. You got into OpenAI because you hired a professional who hacked into our system and went ahead and got that. And the response to that is, number one, OpenAI, how do you know that? How do you know that we had somebody who did that when you're not supposed to be able to tell how we search and what we search? And if it is hackable, how come you aren't telling people it's hackable? You're supposed to be this good guy, and now you're telling them people that, oh, the New York Times hacked it. You mean your product is hackable? Is it hackable by everybody on everything?
Yeah.
Can they get to whatever they want? And so I think OpenAI, they made a big swing with their response to the motion to dismiss, but I wasn't thrilled with where they went. I thought they went too broad in what they did, and I don't think they're going to get a lot of the relief that they want. On the IP stuff, it's pretty well settled right now that artificial intelligence is not a person and cannot own IP. ChatGPT is not a person. Gemini with Google is not a person, so it can't own the AI, right? But a person can go ahead and have a thought, and artificial intelligence can enhance that and make it into something. And if the person has it, then that person can then copyright it or trademark or do whatever it wants, as long as it's not substantially similar to a copyrighted or a trademarked work. So you can go ahead and use AI to make something better, whether it's a work of art or a book or anything that's out there that you can use as intellectual property. But you then got to figure out, wait a minute, is it similar to all the stuff that's been fed into OpenAI? And how do you know? And OpenAI doesn't know. They're not going to tell you. ChatGPT is not going to tell you, oh, by the way, this is substantially similar to something we got off the internet. Because again, the black box, they don't know how they do it and they don't know where they get it from. And so the open question right now is if you're out there in a company and you're generating these products or these processes, are you violating copyrights? Are you violating patents? Are you violating trademarks? And how do you know if that's what it's doing? And so that's an open question that's not settled right now that I think is going to become a big deal in the future.
Yes, because the owners of patents and the owners of intellectual property, if they've tried, I saw that with Dolly and Midjourney and some of the other generative art tools, they've figured out how to massage that data or those prompts so that they won't return like copyrighted Mickey Mouse stuff, Disney characters and stuff, because that's the last thing they want to do is get in a fight with Disney. So apparently it's that you can't go and say, and you can't say, I want Darth Vader fighting Luke Skywalker and all of those kinds of things. It'll shy away from doing that. But we saw with Google last week with Gemini that sometimes those efforts to maybe correct for bias or things like that can go overboard. And there was a big story where Google couldn't. Google's Gemini, when you asked it for a picture of George Washington, would give you everything else but a white man named George Washington. It would give you a Native American George Washington, a black George Washington, but it wouldn't give you a white one. And the same went for the Pope and for a whole bunch of other historical figures who were in fact white. But Google's engineers maybe over-engineered, to put it as kindly as I could put it, to make the results reflective of the society at large, so that even things that would be like you would expect to be more factual, were getting massaged. And so I think that's going to be the other thing that we're going to have to deal with as companies that use AI, is understanding what the guardrails are that are in place around the results we get. Because if we're building, a tool is a tool, and if you start building social judgments and social values into that tool, the users need to at least understand what those values are and how they might affect the outcome. Whether it's, we're not going to deliver this IP to you, or we're going to, infuse it with our own ideas of what social justice looks like.
I mean, I agree.
And I know we're getting very close to Mike Coffey getting canceled territory now. So you're.
Well, no, the guardrails right now, the only people who are putting the guardrails on it are the companies themselves, right? And we're in a arms race right now between, Microsoft with OpenAI and Google with Gemini and Amazon with Claude. We're in an arms race. And Sam Altman comes out from OpenAI and says he's raising $7 trillion to put together a server farm, and his company now is valued at $80 billion. And you've got Elon Musk, who started OpenAI with Sam Altman, suing Sam Altman, saying, look, Sam, this was supposed to be not for profit, and it's supposed to be open source code. And now you're not releasing ChatGPT 3, 3.5, or 4 to the public. What the heck? This wasn't what we meant to do. And now we're trusting Sam Altman, who just got fired and then one day later was hired back. Never underestimate the greed of the American executive. And so the problem is, these are the companies that are putting the guardrails on these products. And you got this concern of what's going to go ahead, and I don't use this word lightly, what is going to trump that? What is going to happen when someone of power goes ahead and says, in the name of national security, I need you to take the guardrails off so I can use it against our enemies? And when you have the militarization of AI, when you have the ability to create robots who then, which is happening right now, the Tesla robots. Right now, you can have these robots who, if you take the guardrails off, can go out there and be vigilantes. And so, yeah, Mike, you're talking about the guardrails, and you're talking about, watch the guardrails. EU's trying like crazy to put some guardrails on with their laws. We've got an executive order here in the US where we're trying to do it. We're going way too slow. And AI is blazing. The arms race is blazing. And by 2026, we should be at artificial general intelligence, which means that AI can do every human task better than the average human. And by 2028, we're going to be at ASI, artificial superintelligence, which means AI can do everything better than every human.
Let's go. I'm ready for it.
AI can play chess better than anybody. AI can play the game Go better than anybody. Any human out there, imagine every task. And this 2026 and 2028, they're empirical data. This is not something I'm making up. These are studies that have been done as how fast this is accelerating. You're going to have a little AI assistant. Everybody is, that you just tell it what you need to do and it'll do it for you. And it'll do it it'll have the intelligence.
Think about what that will mean for humanity. Think about that's going to free up humanity to be so much more creative, and to spend our time doing creative and thoughtful and empathetic work that the robots can't do. I think it's going to be just to shine a little light on your darkness there. I think it's going to be an amazing, brave new world for humanity once we free ourselves from the tedious stuff.
There's a lot of good, and I love what the good is. Medical world is going to be fascinating, right? You're eventually going to get AI assistant robots that are going to be assisting doctors, and they can do real-time diagnoses based on all the data, and it gets every study that's ever been done through the history of time, and it can review it in 30 seconds and come out with, the diagnosis. That's going to be unbelievable, and it's going to be so great. You're eventually going to have AI implants that real time can go ahead and diagnose you, hey, there's cancer cells in your liver. They're just starting out right now, like a warning light on a car will come up on your phone or come up on when the glasses get where we need them to get. And all of that stuff's going to happen. And that's going to be great. We may even get to singularity where you can download your consciousness into a computer and put it into a robot or another person. And in fact, Ann and I, my wife and I, were talking the other night, and I said, if AI makes it so that we can download consciousness and put it on top of another person. So let's say I download my consciousness and everything I've ever thought. I put it on top of my wife's consciousness in her body so that she knows all of what I know and all of what she knows. And we both said that is a horrible, horrible idea.
Don't do that. Don't do that.
we would never and ever should do that. But AI is coming to that point where it is going to have those kind of ramifications, where it's going to be able to do that kind of stuff, which is great. It's going to save the bees. It's going to allocate food properly. It's going to help with climate change. It's going to be unbelievable for the disabled. It's going to be game-changing for the disabled. But you've got on the negative side, you've got, I don't know if you know this, Mike, but the environmental impact of AI. When you do a search, it costs a lot of energy. Just when we're doing, hey, what's the best apple pie recipe in ChatGPT? It's huge energy. You got deep fakes, right? No one's going to believe a picture or a video in 2 or 3 years. Because right now with Sora and with everything else, it's gonna change it. You'll have huge job loss. You'll have financial flash crashes because now computers are controlling all the finances. You're going to have social manipulation. You're going to have hacking of all the systems. Militarization is a scary thing. So there's so much good and there's so much bad, and it's going to happen so fast. And I've had 2 lawyers come up to me recently who are old dinosaur lawyers, and they came to me and they said, oh my gosh, Jim, did you see what this AI can do? Your associates showed me what it did. Can you believe this? And I go, well, yeah, I can't. I've been talking about it for months, but yeah, I can believe it. But now even the dinosaurs in the corner office with the deer head up on the wall and cockroaches in the corner and paper files are starting to figure it out, right? So now we're getting there.
On that tirade, we'll end it there. But thanks for joining me again, Jim. I appreciate you.
Thanks, Mike. Appreciate it.
And thank you for listening. You can comment on this episode or search our previous episodes at goodmorninghr.com or on Facebook, Instagram, or YouTube. And don't forget to follow us wherever you get your podcast. Rob Upchurch is our technical producer, and you can reach him at robmakespods.com. And thank you to Imperative's marketing coordinator, Marianne Hernandez, who keeps the trains running on time. And I'm Mike Coffey. As always, don't hesitate to reach out if I can be of service to you personally or professionally. I'll see you next week, and until then, be well, do good, and keep your chin up.